Okay, welcome back. Hand me this. I want to introduce all of you. We have 600 followers, so you're on stage now. We want to introduce you to all of the devotees who are here hearing us live. There we are. Some of the stalwarts in the devotional service of the Lord. Hey, Haribol. Oh, look, there's love bombs coming your way here. Hearts are flowing. And here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Fantastic. Rati Manjari is still watching and she's sending 15 hearts at once. Yeah, Rati, we can count on you. We can count on you. You're a love bomber. No doubt about it. All right. So here we are again. We had to restart the Facebook page and the recording because it stopped for some reason. Hopefully it will continue. I'm going to read from the last verse. We already started it, but I'm going to read it again. This is Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 30. And we're hearing about Narada Muni and how he became a pure devotee simply by associating with pure devotees when he was a little boy. There's hope. There's hope. Okay. As they were leaving, those Bhaktivedantas, who were very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject, which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. Purport. A pure Vedantist, or Bhaktivedanta, instructs followers. Well, you know, when you're actually making progress, Maya always throws up some obstacles. So it's like one after the other tonight, so you know something's going on here. We're making some tangible advancement tonight because this is my last night before I go to Denver tomorrow, and I'll come back on Monday and we'll have our next reading on Monday. Yes, Monday. Did you hear that, Maya? Back off. Okay. Purport. A pure Vedantist or Bhaktivedanta instructs followers exactly according to the instructions of the Lord himself. The personality of Godhead, both in the Bhagavad Gita and in all other scriptures, has definitely instructed men to follow the Lord only. The Lord is the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. The whole manifested creation is existing by his will, and by his will, when the whole show is finished, he will remain in his eternal abode with all his paraphernalia. Before the creation he was there in the eternal abode, and after the annihilation, he will continue to remain. He is not, therefore, one of the created beings. He is transcendental. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that long, long ago, before the instruction was imparted to Arjuna, the same was instructed to the sun god. And in course of time, the same instruction, being wrongly handled and being broken, was again instructed to Arjuna, because he was his perfect devotee and friend. Therefore, the instruction of the Lord can be because knowledge of devotional service is far, far above knowledge of impersonal Brahman. Jnana means ordinary knowledge, or any branch of knowledge. This knowledge develops up to the knowledge of impersonal Brahman. Above this, when it is partially mixed with devotion, such knowledge develops to knowledge of Paramatma, or the all-pervading Godhead. This is more confidential. But when such knowledge is turned into pure devotional service, and the confidential part of transcendental knowledge is attained, it is called the most confidential knowledge. This most confidential knowledge was imparted by the Lord to Brahma, Arjuna, Uddhava, and so on. So this is a good lesson because it shows that the influence of time is everywhere in the material world at all times. And no matter how great, no matter how strong, no matter how powerful the appearance of the Lord or one of his pure devotees is, over time it gets forgotten. And it's a pattern. By the time Lord Chaitanya came, Vrindavan was just forest. There were nobody knew anything about where Krishna did this, where Krishna did that. You know, all the pastime places you go and you see them now, they weren't there. Or they were there, but no one knew about them. You know, Lord Chaitanya had to go himself and find Radhakund, Shyamakund. They were little puddles in a paddy field. That's all. And he saw and he knew. So he bathed there, became ecstatic. And from that time on, his followers went there, and the Raghunath Das Goswami, you know, by his preaching and by the inspiration, he got some wealthy guys to, you know, make the gad all around and, you know, excavate it and make it into what it is now. But before it was nothing. So we shouldn't doubt, or we shouldn't lose faith, or we shouldn't have our feelings weakened just because we see that things aren't going the way we think they should be. Because it's the nature of time. You know, and, you know, when we preach, you know, there's only going to be a few that are going to come. Don't think that just because we're expert at doing this or we're expert at doing that, that everybody's going to flow in the door. And it's not like that. Because Maya is also very strong. She's got her tools. You know? And we're here in the material world because we wanted some of what Maya's got to offer. Okay, 31. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. You want good association? There you go. Purport. By devotional service, or by the most confidential knowledge, one can understand very easily how the different energies of the Lord are working. One part of his energy is manifesting the material world. The other, superior part of his energy is manifesting the spiritual world. And his intermediate energy is manifesting the living entities who are serving either of the above mentioned energies. The living entities serving material energy are struggling hard for existence, and the happiness which is presented to them is illusory. But those in the spiritual energy are placed under the direct service of the Lord in eternal life, complete knowledge, and perpetual bliss. The Lord desires, as he has directly said in the Bhagavad Gita, that all conditioned souls rotting in the kingdom of material energy come back to him by giving up all engagements in the material world. This is the most confidential part of knowledge. But this can be understood only by the pure devotees, and only such devotees enter the kingdom of God to see him personally and serve him personally. The concrete example is Narada himself, who attained this stage of eternal knowledge and eternal bliss. And the ways and means are open to all, provided one agrees to follow in the footsteps of Sri Narada Muni. According to Shruti, the Supreme Lord has unlimited energies without effort by him, and these are described under the principal headings as above mentioned. Text 32. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Purport. Sri Narada Muni personally experienced that the most feasible and practical way to open the path of salvation is to get, or get relief from the miseries of life, is to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide sources. You see? It's almost in every purport. How much clearer does Prabhupada have to make? And he was like this. Those of us who were there with him, if there was something important and he wanted everybody to know, he would just go on about it, and on about it, and on about it, and on about it, until it was crystal clear to everyone. And now, the kind of controversies that go on, oh, should we, shouldn't we, should we do this, what happened, why did this happen, why did we do this after this, it's all just fluff, basically. It's all just fluff. Because the devotees who are with Prabhupada and who followed his instructions sincerely and are still doing it, they're potent. They're potent, and they're spreading Krishna consciousness. And as Prabhupada says, when the caravan's going by, sometimes different animals will bark, row, 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 but the caravan goes on. I'm going to read that again. Narada Muni personally experienced that the most feasible and practical way to open the path of salvation or get relief from the miseries of life is to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide sources. And Prabhupada is the right and bona fide source. Thank you. This is the only remedial process. The entire material existence is full of miseries. Foolish people have manufactured out of their tiny brains many remedial measures for removing the threefold miseries pertaining to the body and mind, pertaining to the natural disturbances, and in relation with other living beings. The whole world is struggling very hard to exist out of these miseries, but men do not know that without the sanction of the Lord, no plan or no remedial measure can actually bring about the desired peace and tranquility. The remedial measure to cure a patient by medical treatment is useless if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. The attempt to cross a river or the ocean by a suitable boat will fail if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. And parents' attempt to protect their children cannot succeed if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. We should know for certain that the Lord is the ultimate sanctioning officer, and we must therefore dedicate our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for ultimate success, or to get rid of the obstacles on the path of success. The Lord is all-pervading, all-powerful, omniscient, and omnipresent. He is the ultimate sanctioning agent of all good or bad effects. We should therefore learn to dedicate our activities unto the mercy of the Lord and accept Him either as impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not matter what one is. One must dedicate everything in the service of the Lord. If one is a learned scholar, scientist, philosopher, poet, or so on, then he should employ his learning to establish the supremacy of the Lord. Try to study the energy of the Lord in every sphere of life. Do not decry Him and try to become like Him or take His position simply by fragmental accumulation of knowledge. If one is an administrator, statesman, warrior, politician, and so on, then one should try to establish the Lord's supremacy in statesmanship. Memo to Trump. Fight for the cause of the Lord, as Sri Arjuna did. In the beginning, Sri Arjuna, the great fighter, declined to fight, but when he was convinced by the Lord that the fighting was necessary, Sri Arjuna changed this decision and fought for his cause. Similarly, if one is a businessman, an industrialist, an agriculturalist, and so on, then one should spend his hard-earned money for the cause of the Lord. Think always that the money which is accumulated is the wealth of the Lord. Wealth is considered to be the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the Lord is Narayana, or the husband of Lakshmi. Try to engage Lakshmi in the service of Lord Narayana and be happy. That is the way to realize the Lord in every sphere of life. The best thing is, after all, to get relief from all material activities and engage oneself completely in hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. But in case of the absence of such an opportunity, one should try to engage in the service of the Lord everything for which one has specific attraction. That is the way of peace and prosperity, and that is the remedial measure for all the miseries of material existence. The word sangshuchitam in this stanza is also significant. One should not think for a moment that the realization of Narada was childish imagination only. It is not like that. It is so realized by the expert and erudite scholars, and that is the real import of the word sangshuchitam. Text 33. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which is was caused by that very same thing? Very famous verse. Amayo yash chabhutanam jayate yenasu vrata tadeva yatmayam dravyam napunati chikitsitam. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Purport. An expert physician treats his patient with therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparations sometimes cause disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into yogurt and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized, just as by fire, iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. I will repeat that again for all of our benefit. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. The best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. Everything is an emanation from the Supreme Spirit, and by His inconceivable power, He can convert spirit into matter and matter into spirit. Therefore, a material thing, so called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. The necessary condition for such a change is to employ so-called matter in the service of the Spirit. That is the way to treat our material diseases and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane, where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized by us. Text 34. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. Purport. Fruitive work which has perpetually engaged the living being is compared to the banyan tree in the Bhagavad Gita. for it is certainly very deep-rooted. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another, according to one's nature of work. The propensity for enjoyment No? Oh, he can see. No, he won't eat. Apple doesn't fall from the tree. Right? Move those slippers over here. Yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. Hare Krishna. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another, according to one's nature of work. The propensity for enjoyment may be turned into the desire for serving the mission of the Lord. By doing so, one's activity is changed into karma yoga, or the way by which one can attain spiritual perfection. He's gone. Really? Okay. Oh, just checking. I should have known you were in samadhi. By doing so, one's activity is changed into karma yoga, or the way by which one can attain spiritual perfection while engaging in the work for which one has a natural tendency. Ram, Hare Krishna. Here the word Atma indicates the categories of all fruitive work. The conclusion is that when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed with the service of the Lord, it will cease to generate further karma and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service, which will not only cut off completely the root of the banyan tree of work, but will also carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. The summary is that one has to first of all seek the association of pure devotees who not only are learned in the Vedanta, but are self-realized souls and unalloyed devotees of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. In that association, the neophyte devotees must render loving service physically and mentally without reservation. This service attitude will induce the great souls to be more favorable in bestowing their mercy, which injects the neophyte with all the transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. Gradually, this is developed into a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which makes him able to catch up the constitutional position of the gross and subtle bodies, and beyond them, the knowledge of the pure soul and his eternal relation with the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead. After the relation is ascertained by the establishment of eternal relation, pure devotional service to the Lord begins, gradually developing into perfect knowledge of the personality of Godhead beyond the purview of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. By such Purushottama Yoga, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one is made perfect even during the present corporal existence, and one exhibits all the good qualities of the Lord to the highest percentage. Such is the gradual development by association of pure devotees. 35. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Purport. The general and popular notion is that by discharging fruitive work in terms of the direction of the scriptures, one becomes perfectly able to acquire transcendental knowledge for spiritual realization. Bhakti yoga is considered by some to be another form of karma. But factually, Bhakti yoga is above both karma and jnana. Bhakti yoga is independent of jnana or karma. On the other hand, jnana and karma are dependent on Bhakti yoga. This Kriya yoga or karma yoga is recommended by Sri Narada to Vyasa, is specifically recommended because the principle is to satisfy the Lord. The Lord does not want his sons, the perfect living beings, to suffer the threefold miseries of life. He desires that all of them come to him and live with him. But going back to Godhead means that one must purify himself from material infections. When work is performed, therefore, to satisfy the Lord, the performer becomes gradually purified from the material affection. This purification means attainment of spiritual knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is dependent on karma or work done on behalf of the Lord. Other knowledge, being devoid of bhakti yoga or satisfaction of the Lord, cannot lead one back to the kingdom of God, which means that it cannot even offer salvation, as already explained in connection with the stanza, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam, Bhagavatam 1.5.12. The conclusion is that a devotee engaged in the unalloyed service of the Lord, specifically in hearing and chanting of his transcendental glories, becomes simultaneously spiritually enlightened by the divine grace as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 36. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Purport. An expert devotee of the Lord can mold his life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, he can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, qualities, and so on. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor. According to the Vedic rites, even in the worship of some demigods like Indra, Brahma, Saraswati, and Ganesha, the system is that in all circumstances, the representation of Vishnu must be there as Yagyeshwar, or the controlling power of such sacrifices. It is recommended that a particular demigod be worshipped for a particular purpose, but still the presence of Vishnu is compulsory in order to make the function proper. Apart from such Vedic duties, even in our ordinary dealings, for example in our household affairs, or in our business or profession, we must consider that the result of all activities must be given over to the Supreme Enjoyer, Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared himself to be the Supreme Enjoyer of everything, the Supreme Proprietor of every planet, and the Supreme Friend of all beings. No one else but Lord Sri Krishna can claim to be the proprietor of everything within his creation. A pure devotee remembers this constantly, and in doing so, he repeats the transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, which means that he is constantly in touch with the Lord. The Lord is identical with his name, fame, and so on, and therefore to be associated with his name, fame, and so on constantly means actually to associate with the Lord. The major portion of our monetary income, not less than 50%, must be spent to carry out the order of Lord Krishna. Not only should we give the profit of our earning to this cause, but we must also arrange to preach this cult of devotion to others, because that is also one of the orders of the Lord. The Lord definitely says that no one is more dear to him than one who is always engaged in the preaching work of the Lord's name and fame all over the world. The scientific discoveries of the material world can be equally engaged in carrying out his order. He wants the message of the Bhagavad Gita to be preached amongst his devotees. It may not be so done amongst those who have no credit of austerities, charity, education, and so on. Therefore, the attempt must go on to convert unwilling men to become his devotees. Lord Chaitanya has taught a very simple method in this connection. He has taught the lesson for preaching the transcendental message through singing, dancing, and refreshment. As such, 50% of our income may be spent for this purpose. In this fallen age of quarrel and dissension, if only the leading and wealthy persons of society agree to spend 50% of their income in the service of the Lord, as it is taught by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is absolute certainty of converting this hell of pandemonium to the transcendental abode of the Lord. No one will disagree to partake in a function where good singing, dancing, and refreshment are administered. Everyone will attend such a function, and everyone is sure to feel individually the transcendental presence of the Lord. This alone will help the attendants associate with the Lord and thereby purify themselves in spiritual realization. The only condition for successfully executing such spiritual activities is that they must be conducted under the guidance of a pure devotee who is completely free from all mundane desires, fruitive activities, and dry speculations about the nature of the Lord. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It is already spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, especially, and in all other Vedic literatures generally. We have simply to accept them in toto and abide by the orders of the Lord. That will guide us to the path of perfection. One can remain in his own position. No one has to change his position, especially in this age of variegated difficulties. The only condition is that one must give up the habit of dry speculation aimed at becoming one with the Lord. And after giving up such lofty, puffed up vanities, one may very submissively receive the orders of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam from the lips of a bona fide devotee whose qualification is mentioned above. That will make everything successful without a doubt. Text 37. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Niruddhaya Namak Sankarshanaya Cha. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshana. Purport. According to the Pancharatra, Narayana is the primeval cause of all expansions of Godhead. These are Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Vasudeva and Sankarshana are on the middle and left, Pradyumna is on the right of Sankarshana, and Aniruddha is on the left of Vasudeva. And thus the four deities are situated. They are known as the four aides de camp of Lord Sri Krishna. This is a Vedic hymn or mantra beginning with Omkara Pranava, and thus the mantra is established by the transcendental chanting process, namely Om Namo Dhimahi, etc. The purport is that any transaction, either in the field of fruitive work or in empiric philosophy, which is not ultimately aimed at transcendental realization of the Supreme Lord, is to be considered to be useless. I'll read that again. The purport is that any transaction, either in the field of fruitive work or in empiric philosophy, which is not ultimately aimed at transcendental realization of the Supreme Lord, is considered to be useless. Naradaji has therefore explained the nature of unalloyed devotional service by his personal experience in the development of intimacy between the Lord and the living entity by a gradual process of progressive devotional activities. Such a progressive march of transcendental devotion for the Lord culminates in the attainment of loving service of the Lord, which is called prema, in different transcendental variegatedness called rasas, tastes. Such devotional service is also executed in mixed forms, namely mixed with fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculations. Now, the question which was raised by the great rishis, headed by Shonaka, regarding the confidential part of Sutta's achievement through the spiritual masters, is explained herein by the chanting of this hymn, consisting of 33 letters. And this mantra is addressed to the four deities, or the Lord with his plenary expansions. The central figure is Lord Sri Krishna, because the plenary portions are his aides de camp. The most confidential part of the instruction is that one should always chant and remember the glories of the Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his different plenary portions, expanded as Vyasadeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Those expansions are the original deities for all other truths, namely either Vishnu Tattva or Shakti Tattva. Text 38. Thus, he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who has no material form. Purport. Our present senses are all made of material elements, and therefore they are imperfect in realizing the transcendental form of Lord Vishnu. He is therefore worshipped by sound representation via the transcendental method of chanting. Anything which is beyond the scope of experience by our imperfect senses can be realized fully by the sound representation. A person transmitting sound from a far distant place can be factually experienced. If this is materially possible, why not spiritually? Oh, this is the ninth point. I'll read that again. You caught that? A person transmitting sound from a distant place can be factually experienced. Factually what? Just checking. If this is materially possible, why not spiritually? This experience is not a vague, impersonal experience. It is actually an experience of the transcendental personality of Godhead, who possesses the pure form of eternity, not bliss and knowledge. In the Amarakosha Sanskrit dictionary, the word murti carries import in twofold meanings, namely form and difficulty. Therefore, amurtikam is explained by Acharya Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura as meaning without difficulty. Prabhupada was always saying, wasn't he? What is a difficulty? He'd explain something so complex that was so simple. What's the difficulty? And everybody would go, right, Prabhupada, right. As hard as it was. The transcendental form of eternal bliss and knowledge can be experienced by our original spiritual senses, which can be revived by chanting of the holy mantras or transcendental sound representations. Such sound should be received from the transparent agency of the bona fide spiritual master, and the chanting may be practiced by the direction of the spiritual master. That will gradually lead us nearer to the Lord. This method of worship is recommended in the Pancharatrika system, which is both recognized and authorized. The Pancharatrika system has the most authorized codes for transcendental devotional service. Without the help of such codes, one cannot approach the Lord, certainly not by dry philosophical speculation. The Pancharatrika system is both practical and suitable for this age of coral. The Pancharatra is more important than the Vedanta for this modern age. Text 39. Imam Swanigamam Brahman. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate, loving service. Purport. Communion with the Lord by transmission of the transcendental sound is non-different from the whole Spirit, Lord Sri Krishna. It is a completely perfect method for approaching the Lord. By such contact with the Lord, without offense of material conceptions numbering 10, the devotee can rise above the material plane to understand the inner meaning of the Vedic literatures, including the Lord's existence in the transcendental realm. The Lord reveals his identity gradually to one who has unflinching faith, both in the spiritual master and in the Lord. After this, the devotee is endowed with mystic opulences, which are 8 in number. And above all, the devotee is accepted in the confidential entourage of the Lord and is entrusted with specific service of the Lord through the agency of the spiritual master. A pure devotee is more interested in serving the Lord than in showing an exhibition of the mystic powers dormant in him. Sri Narada has explained all these from his personal experience, and one can obtain all the facilities which Sri Narada obtained by perfecting the chanting process of the sound representation of the Lord. There is no bar for chanting this transcendental sound by anyone, provided it is received through Narada's representative coming down by the chain of disciplic succession, or the parampara system. Text 40. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Purport. Sri Narada Muni, from practical experience, definitely asserts that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. There are 4 classes of good men, and there are 4 classes of bad men also. The 4 classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty God, and therefore such good men, 1, when they are in difficulty, 2, when they are in need of money, 3, when they are advanced in knowledge, and 4, when they are inquisitive to know more and more about God, intuitively take shelter of the Lord. As such, Naradaji advises Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge which he has already attained. As far as the bad men are concerned, They are also four in number. One, those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive fruitive work and thus are subjected to the accompanying miseries. Two, those who are simply addicted to vicious work for sense gratification and so suffer the consequence. Three, those who are materially very much advanced in knowledge but who suffer because they do not have the sense to acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Lord. And four, the class of men who are known as atheists and who therefore purposely hate the very name of God, although they are always in difficulty. Sri Naradaji advised Vyasadeva to describe the glories of the Lord just to do good to all 8 classes of men, both good and bad. Srimad-Bhagavatam is therefore not meant for any particular class of men or sect. It is for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Narada's Instructions on Srimad-Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. So there's some pretty nice preaching advice there at the end. You know, we're meant to try to make everyone Krishna conscious. That's Lord Chaitanya's movement. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it states very clearly in the 7th chapter and in the Adi Lila, 7th chapter, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, and many other places, that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda did not consider who was fit and who was unfit. They distributed Krishna consciousness to everyone. But there are classes of men who escape. And in the Kali Yuga, there's a lot of them. And therefore, we should not, well, first of all, we should attract them, like it says in the purport. Okay, Prabhupada, and he would go out, you know, relieved. Of course, it was being cooked by Prabhupada. They were pretty potent. Gulab Jamans. He called them the ISKCON bullets. But anyway, the point is that, you know, in the very beginning, it was just Prabhupada doing just this, just being himself and serving them and, you know, tolerating them and loving them and feeding them and teaching them how to dress, how to keep clean. It was like raising babies. You'll find out soon enough, you know. And but then he was very, very intense about getting these books out. And as these books came out, he was very intent on us reading them. My offering, which I will, when I read them to Prabhupada, Vyasapuja is coming up, then I'll send it out. It'll be in the book, but I'll send it out because it's. I was told by Dravidya it's very strong, and it's promoting this very thing that we're talking about now, and it's well researched, and it uses up all the pages, all the words that were supposed to be allotted. You know, it's 3,000 words, no more, and my offer is 2,000 is not. 2,999 exactly. It's on the word processor. So, but then we have to have a process of filtering them up so they can come here and hear like this regularly. Because you can see when you do it regularly and you keep hearing from someone who loves to read these books and devotees who love to hear, then everything changes, you know? And then you get that taste, and once you get that taste, there's an overflow, there's an overflow valve, I can only take so much, all right, overflow valve, it starts to spill out, and when it starts to spill out, then more people will come, and then filter them up again. And not that it just has to be me or somebody like me to come and do this, although not very many of my age and nature and ashram will do this. But anyway, but all of us have to learn this, and all of us have to become beacons. And you don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to know a big philosopher and be able to debate and all these things. Just get a taste for hearing these books and read them out loud. And give others a taste to read them out loud. And you'll see. It's magic. Look what's happening. The atmosphere is incredible. It brings everyone together. It gives a spiritual experience. And that's what we need. We need a tangible spiritual experience. The heart has to be moved. Okay. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, any reflections? Any points that stuck out in your mind while you were reading that you want to hear again? Yes. Sometimes in my association, so potent. You must be. Maybe we'll take her temperature. See if you give her an aspirin. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Hits the heart, and then soon you leave the room. Then Maya comes flowing in again. Therefore, and that's the same for everyone. It's no joke. It's the same for everyone. You don't have some kind of special brand of Maya. I've got XYZ brand of Maya, and I can't do this. No. It's the same for everyone. Therefore, it says, what does it say, Prabhupada in purport? A devotee should mold his life in such a way that he will always be able to think of Krishna. And remember what I said the other night? There's that verse, in Bhagavad Gita 18:57, in the purport, where Prabhupada said, no matter what you do, whatever your occupation is, whatever your activities are, if you think before you do it, I have been appointed to do this duty by Krishna. That simple thought is the gateway. And by learning that, you will think of Krishna. You will begin to think of Krishna gradually, more and more and more. So it's not unusual, it's natural. Prabhupada used to tell us, Krishna is all pervasive, and so is Maya all pervasive. How that works, that's very difficult to understand. But that's Krishna's will. But why is it like that? Why is it his will? It's because that's what we wanted. That's the point. If we get that through in our hearts, we are here because we wanted to be. How else? What else is the answer? Why is anybody sitting here? People come from India. Why? Because I wanted to be here. Everybody is here where they are exactly because they want to be. Everyone in the whole universe, even the birds flying here. You watch them. They fly and then they see another one. They go where they want to go. So once we get that in our head, it's my responsibility. My desire brought me here. My desire can take me out. Because desire is the basis. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, it's described that the spiritual world is here, and the material world is a reflection, and the medium, that's the water, like when a tree is on the bank of a very clear lake or some body of water, then you can see the tree perfectly. They take these photos, great photographers. They take a moment when it's completely calm and they see the exact reflection of a building or a tree on the body of water, on the top of the body of water. So that water is desire. It's desire that keeps us in the spiritual world, and it's desire that keeps us in the material world. It's the basis. So we have to change that desire. And we change that desire by learning these things that are in the scriptures, learning by hearing, getting a taste, and then remembering. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. These are the first 3 stages of devotional service. And it's not that, okay, now I can hear and chant, and once I get it, then I can go and cook and not hear anymore. Or go offer the deities and not hear anymore, because I've gone to the next stage. It's not like that. The hearing has to go on, and the hearing will go on even in the spiritual world. One time, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Satsvarup Maharaj when he was the GBC of Dallas. And it wasn't long after Radhakalachandji were installed there. And there was some, I don't know exactly what the incident was, but there was some incident, in the pujari room, the kinds of incidences that go on. And so Satsvarup Maharaj asked him about it, what to do. And in his letter back, his return letter, Prabhupada said, if you don't properly and sufficiently hear about Krishna, then even when you're in the deity room dressing the deities, you will be dressing dolls. It will be just as if you're addressing dolls. And after some time, it will become a burden. So the hearing is essential, because we can't understand the other processes of devotional service without sufficient hearing and proper hearing. Part of proper hearing means from the right person, And even, devotees have become very knowledgeable, and then they give lectures and do seminars and PowerPoint, presentations and all these things. But, the tendency, I'm not saying this is always true, but sometimes the tendency is it's more about me and how I put my words together. The title of my offering this year is Letting Srila Prabhupada Speak for Himself, Part 2. It's a sequel from last year's. So if you do this, you will become empowered. You will become empowered to give others Krishna consciousness. And the pleasure that comes from doing that is greater than any other pleasure. Why? Because it is the most pleasing to Krishna. He says it right there. Nachatasman manusheshu kachchin me priyakritama. There's never been a person more dear to me than he who actually explains these things to others. And you have to be very patient, because not very many people can hear. And sometimes it's heartbreaking because they look like they're going to come and then they go away and they're like, they just flip. But that's the way it is. Especially in this age, but in general, that's the way it is. So, tomorrow morning I'm going to Denver, and I'm going to be there for just 5 days. I don't know how long I can stay away from this place with this going on. It's getting harder and harder. I'm captured. I'm a captured person. And then I'll come back, and then I'll stay until the 28th of August. then I'll go, and I have to do a couple of things, and I have to go back to India, and I'll come back as soon as I can. But we're starting to really move on this audiobook for the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Like this morning I did 55 pages. Yesterday it was 70 pages. Day before that was 58 pages. Day before that 71 pages. It's like moving, you know. But to do the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita without making a mistake, and then the Bhagavatam, the whole thing. I mean, you can see we're reading the Bhagavatam. We're not reading like 41 pages a day. Now we're reading 20, 25 pages a day. You know, 41 pages a day is a year. 20 pages a day is 2 years. So to try to read it and get it right without making a mistake, you know, I'm talking about maybe 3-4 years.
Both?
Practically, both.
And when do you expect to finish the Chaitanya?
Well, I should finish the Adi Leela by the time I leave here in August 28th, or close to it. And then because we're reading from the final, the next printed edition will be the final text.
So it will be released in branches or?
No.
Together?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that. We have to talk to the BBT about that. That's up to them. Vaisheshika Prabhu was made a BBT trustee, full BBT trustee. He's in charge of communication and propagation and getting it out there. So he may. It's a good idea. Put it out, you know, as it gets done. Yeah. And the editing is another thing. It takes time to edit it. Because when you start and you make a little mistake, like here I'm just reading and I make a mistake, and I just keep going. But when you're doing it for the audio book, there can't be any mistakes. So when that happens, then you have to stop, you go back over it again. And to save time, we just do that and just keep going, and then keep going, then stop, and then keep going. And the editor, the sound engineer, has to go back and put it back all together, take out the parts, you know, that are meant to be, and put it all together, make it fit. Then, you know, do the what they call EQ, equalizer, and you know, the compression and all those things to make the sound as consistent as possible. So it takes time. But you know, I think that we can finish the Chaitanya Charitamrita within a year and a half. Krishna willing, the blessings of all of you, I can stay alive long enough. That's why I'm pushing, and that's why I'm only doing this, because I'm 72 and I'm not Prabhupada. Prabhupada started